Hi, this is Michelle Peterson, and this is my final assignment for LIN520 over ISLA. Now, before I actually talk about the variables, I did want to inform you that I actually make a distinction between learning and acquisition. I look at learning as something that happens both inside and outside of the classroom. It is a conscious act, where I view acquisition as more of an unconscious act. It's very personal and it occurs over a long period of time. So it was very difficult to choose three variables. Being that it's ISLA, instruction is very important. So I chose instruction, but there's so many aspects to instruction that I'm going to look at explicit and implicit, both in terms of knowledge, learning, and touch a little bit on instruction, individual differences, and interaction/communication. So I kind of stuck with the three I's. Okay, so my first variable, instruction, it was very interesting to me that Lowen started off the first chapter with two important questions, in my opinion. Is instruction beneficial for L2 learning? And if so, how can the effectiveness for instruction be optimized? Now, SLA theorists have varying opinions on how to answer these questions, and it was a great stepping off point for us this semester. Now, before I get to the actual instruction, it's important to understand both implicit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Implicit being more, as it was called, non-declarative or unconscious, meaning, for example, somebody cannot explain why they say something a certain way, whereas explicit knowledge is more declarative, it's conscious, and so the person is able to explain why. They have the rules easily available in their head, so to speak. But knowledge is different from learning. Okay? And so some think that implicit learning is going to result in implicit knowledge, and explicit learning will, result in explicit knowledge, which makes quite a bit of sense. But can explicit knowledge become implicit knowledge? Okay. This leads us to the interface hypothesis. Okay. So Lowen mentioned that there's three parts to this hypothesis. There's the non-interface, the weak interface, and the strong interface. Now the non-interface, where BVP is camped out in, okay, says that no, absolutely not. Explicit knowledge cannot become implicit knowledge. Now, there are some, I believe, like Ellis, who are more in the camp of the weak interface, that although they are distinct, both implicit and explicit do have a kind of a relationship. And then there are others that are in the strong interface camp, including myself, which says, yes, that explicit knowledge can become implicit knowledge. And it is seen over a continuum. Now, a strong supporter of that is the skills acquisition theory, okay, which has three stages. There's the declarative knowledge. It's the knowledge that. I look at that in the terms of the rules, the explanations. And once you get a good basis of that kind of knowledge, it can lead you to procedural knowledge, which is knowledge how to use that information, how to use that language. Okay? Which then further down the line, and this again as acquisition takes a long time, it is a time-consuming thing, will lead to automation, which is implicit knowledge. It's not having to think about it. It's the ability to respond simultaneously and not have to think about the rules or how to use the rules. Okay? I tend to be more in that camp, where I do believe this is a process, but it is a long process. Now, understanding how knowledge works will play a part into instruction. Are we going to explicitly teach? Are we going to use explicit instruction, which leads to explicit learning and explicit knowledge? Are we going to incorporate implicit instruction, which again will lead to implicit learning, implicit knowledge? Or is a combination of the two best in second language acquisition? Now, I myself, I know that in my own classroom, I try to stay away from explicit instruction. I use a lot of that outside of the classroom in a flipped classroom. And I know that I personally need to work more on implicit instruction. That is something that I was never taught in any pedagogy class how to incorporate. So I'm curious to learn that. And my best case scenario would be using a combination of the two. Now, individual differences also play a part. Okay. Now, these differences do not play a role in how language is acquired, as BVP, as well as others have mentioned, that language acquisition occurs over time, but in general, we all acquire language in a very similar way. Now, this is barring any medical conditions, but by that I mean the processes we go through to acquire language are very similar. Individual differences, however, will play a part in the rate of acquisition. They affect the rate. And BVP mentioned that the three most researched individual differences are motivation, aptitude, and working memory. Okay. Now, motivation, the why are the students in the class to learn the L2, can and will affect the amount of time they spend on learning the L2, thus affecting their rate of acquisition. I have personally seen this in my years of teaching, that students who want to learn, their motivation could be many things, whether they have decided they want to major in a language or minor in the language, whether they see how their future professional lives can benefit from knowing a second language, will spend more time and effort and, quote, learn faster compared to those who are in the class for graduation requirements. They don't necessarily want to be there, but in order for them to graduate with their degree, they need to be there. Okay, now, aptitude and working memory are different than motivation, because motivation could be influenced and is influenced in many times by outside influences. Now, aptitude and working memory are not. These are things that we are born with, kind of like we just can't change our personality. Okay? We can, try to improve upon them, but we're kind of born with a baseline for each of these. Okay. Now I want to go on to my third variable, which I termed interaction/communication, because I'm using parts of the interaction approach, but not a focus on the interaction approach. And I want to start off, first of all, with BVP's definition, that he defines communication as the expression and interpretation of meaning in a given context for a given purpose. Okay? And so through communication, we interact. Okay? And that interaction can be synchronous or asynchronous. And now, as we are coming back into the actual classroom with more face-to-face, we're seeing more synchronous interaction, but that does not state that we don't have any asynchronous interaction, which can be done outside of the class period as well. Now, most will theorize and state that input is one of the most important variables for interaction. And Lowen describes two types of input, both positive and negative. And most researchers will agree that positive input is very important. But there's more discord or non-agreement as to the benefit of negative input, such as corrective feedback. Okay. And so there are some, such as Truscott, that believe that this negative input, for example, corrective feedback, could be ineffective and even potentially harmful to students, to learners, but many others have disputed this and state that corrective feedback done properly could be beneficial to students. Now, Swain had mentioned that output is also important. Now, we all know that BVP is, input, 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 but output can be just as important. And as Swain concluded, learners need to be pushed to produce output during meaning-focused classroom interaction because it forces them to process the morphosyntactic elements of language as they comprehend input. And I agree. For me, that output that a student creates or produces becomes input to those around them. Okay. Now, tasks are very important in facilitating interaction in the classroom. And both Lowen and BVP state how tasks need to have the following. They should resemble a real-world activity. They should have a focus on meaning. There should not necessarily be a non-linguistic outcome, and learners are expected to use their own linguistic resources. Okay. And tasks leads me to my classroom. Okay. So as discussed in Lowen's final chapter, there is a gap or a divide between the research theories and what happens in the classroom. After taking this class, I do not think that my pedagogy will change greatly, but I will be tweaking it. I will work to look for more kinds of input and input instruction. I plan to reevaluate what I previously thought of as being tasks, but perhaps they're more activities. I will also create more activities or tasks that I hope will better motivate students to want to learn and increase the communication in the classroom. Focus less on practiced and forced output and focus more on interactive output. Yeah, I can do this by using a flipped classroom where a lot of the explicit instruction is done outside of the class. Having fewer meaningful activities, again, less of that practiced or forced output and more interactive output by having more communicative or interactive activities and or tasks. Okay. So going back to Lowen's first two questions, is instruction beneficial? I believe it is. How can the effectiveness be optimized? That is a long question in and of itself, and there are many different ways and many different variables we need to take into account, but I believe this course has given me a great start in looking at the three variables that I've talked about here. So I hope I did this assignment correctly, and I hope you have a good break.